Hello, I am an old fart, and I have a guilty pleasure. I like knives. I'm not an expert or an official representative of anybody or anything. I just like knives. Today, as we take a tour through my collection of small folding pocket knives, we're going to start over while I take the weight balance references off. Actually, maybe I'll just leave that in to show that we're all human. So today, as we take a little tour through my collection of small folding pocket knives, we're going to look at this guy. This is a Chris Reeve Knives Impinda, so the Chris Reeve slip joint. It's an interesting knife in a number of ways. Most important one, I think, is probably that Chris Reeve, the man, retired not long ago from Chris Reeve Knives. And so this is the first knife that Chris Reeve Knives has produced since Chris Reeve's retirement. This one is a design by well-known knife designer and maker Bill Harsey, and then manufactured by Chris Reeve Knives. So quite interesting. Why did I find it interesting to get? Well, I'm coming to like slip joints. I've explored a few sort of high-end modern slip joints from other manufacturers and found that they really do fit that niche of what I say I collect, which is non-threatening gentleman's knives. So I'm coming to like slip joints, and I have come to love Chris Reeve Knives for their quality, their manufacturing quality, their premium materials, and basically just being a premium brand. So when I learned that Chris Reeve Knives makes a slip joint, that was an easy thing to realize that I would like to have. So formally, this is a Chris Reeve Knives Impinda. The name apparently means repeat or repetition in Zulu. All of Chris Reeve's knives are named after or with African Zulu names that mean relevant things. So repeat, what's up with that? Well, their motto sort of this knife is open, cut, fold, repeat. Right? So it's just the idea, I think, that they're trying to project is that it is a good, reliable, utilitarian knife to just use. So that's this knife. There aren't any options on ordering the knife. This is what you get. You get these scales, you get right-hand operation, and as far as I can tell, there are no options available. The mechanism, as I said, is a slip joint, so it's a non-locking knife. It opens with a traditional thumbnail nick. Pull it open. Now it locks in the sense that there's a fairly powerful spring holding it there. There is no lock. And when you're done with it, you push it closed. So a slip joint just like my old jackknife from my Boy Scout days. Now the size of the knife becomes interesting. Do some international size comparisons on it. The most important one, the pocket calculator scale. It's slightly less than a pocket calculator. It's about 0.99 pocket calculators. So almost exactly one pocket calculator in length. Comparing it to some other knives, well, this is a slip joint, so let's compare it to some slip joints. Now, the slip joint that everybody has would be the Swiss Army Knives Victorinox Cadet, and as you can see, it's quite a bit bigger than that. So this is a big slip joint. The first quality modern slip joint that I experienced was the Lion Steel Best Man, which is basically the same size as the Victorinox Cadet, and so again the Impinda is quite a bit larger than the Best Man. Lion Steel makes a bigger slip joint, the Thrill, and now we're getting into the right range. It is a few millimeters larger than the Thrill, but essentially that size. And just to compare it to other Chris Reeve knives, this is a small Sebenza. So as you can see, it's in the size range of the Chris Reeve smalls. So the small Sebenza, small Nkosi is even smaller than this, so it's slightly larger than those knives. So it is sort of a big knife in the mid-sized category. It's not as big as their full-size knives, the Sebenza, the Nkosi, but it's a large-ish knife in the mid-sized category. And it's a heavy knife. It's 96 grams, and it's all metal. There's a lot of metal there. Compare it just, for example, the small Sebenza is 81 grams. So it's about 18 grams, about half an ounce more than the small Sabenza. So I'm really noticing that heft there. There's some weight there to feel and to have to hold. The blade, we've already had it open. Blade is 3 1/8 inches long. So it's a good sized blade for cutting with, but that size seems a little odd to me. One of the things about slip joints is that they are legal in some places where locking knives are not, like a lot of Europe, according to my understanding. So if you're designing a knife with the purpose of being legal, then you'd think that you'd go under 3 inches, which is another legal threshold in many places. Not 3 1/8. And if you took that 1/8 inch off, it would be legal in more places. And I don't think anybody would notice the 1/8 inch. So that always seemed to me to be a little odd that they would pick that size on a slip joint knife. And I make the same comment about the Lion Steel Thrill, by the way, which same thing, 3 1/8 inches, slip joint. Why that size? So anyway, there you go. The blade steel is Chris Reeve's standard blade steel, which is S35 VN. It's great steel. I like it a lot. Sharpens extremely nicely and easily and holds a reasonably good edge. And Chris Reeve seems to be coming out with S45 VN in a number of their knives. I wouldn't be surprised to see a 45 VN in the Impinda, but I have not seen any announcements to that effect. The blade is a drop point, a little longer and pointier than some of the drop points, but still a drop point blade, and I like those a lot. There is a small choil on the blade, which is enough to let you sharpen the blade without impacting the shoulder of the handle, but not big enough for any other use. It's really not a finger choil. It's just not enough room there to stay clear of the live corner of the blade. So strictly a sharpening choil, but more than big enough for that purpose. The body is 2 slabs of titanium, and it's, I don't know what the name that finish, sandblasted or stone blasted, I don't know. It's quite noticeably rough, has a really easy to hold texture. And the back spacer down the middle is polished, I assume that's steel. So it sets off quite nicely. You can see the sort of the dull matte titanium and the polished line down the center is attractive. The clip is the same milled titanium sandblast finish, and the clip is slightly curved. It follows the curve of the body, and I find that quite attractive. Shallow carry. On the clip is set in a recess, as most of Chris Reeve's clips are, and shallow carry. I would have preferred a deep carry clip, but on this design it's not obvious how you would do that, and Chris's clips do work very well. There is a lanyard hole offset from the end of the body. I don't imagine I'll put a lanyard in this knife. It's just not that kind of knife, but the option is there. Is the knife ambidextrous? Strangely, no. Obviously, it's one-sided clip. The clip is not movable. No real reason why it couldn't be. It's not like there's a mechanism that's in the way, but the clip is not movable. And oddly, the nail nick is only on one side. So lefties, sorry, you can't open this with your left hand. Well, I guess you can, you get your index finger in that nick, but that's don't think I could do that, or at least it wouldn't be easy. So it is very much a right-handed knife. Now, Chris Reeve offers left-handed versions of many of their other knives. I didn't see any sign that you can order a left-handed version of this one, but perhaps you can, who knows. And for those of you who care, it is manufactured in the United States, like all of Chris Reeve knives, Idaho made. Now, different from Chris Reeve's knives, he usually says Idaho made on the clip side, on the outside of the frame. On this one, that text is hidden inside the frame. And you probably can't see it, but there, inside the frame, is the, here, let me get a light. Inside the frame, there we are. Idaho made. We'll come back to that. So there's a lot to like about this knife, and I do like it. Being a Chris Reeve knife, as you would expect, the fit and finish and the manufacturing tolerances are incredible. In this one, these are moving parts. That's the back spring there. Look at that tolerance. There's just no noticeable gap there. Look at the tolerance here on this side. There's no noticeable gap where the blade swings in the pivot, which is interesting because this blade is running on phosphor bronze washers. So how is there not a gap there, the width of the washers? And the answer is the washers are actually recessed. I haven't taken this knife apart, but I've seen videos. There, if we look down in there, there's the washer. The washers are actually recessed. They're sitting in milled out boreholes, just protruding enough to be the contact surface. So that kind of detail in the engineering is really incredible. So the fit and finish is beautiful, and I like that. Opening the knife, although this is not a locking knife, the back spring is very powerful. And when you open it, it feels pretty secure. Now, I can't move it. After all, it is a slip joint, but it doesn't feel like it's easily going to snap shut when I'm using it. It's certainly a more secure feeling than the Boy Scout knife I remember from my youth. I like the appearance of the knife. I particularly like this. The back spring, which also functions as a back spacer, is the same material, I think, and the same width as the blade, and so you get this nice consistent line of the polished metal running right along the back of the knife. Somewhere around here it starts becoming a spring, and then it flows into the blade, all the same width, the same color, and I think that gives the knife a really nice flowing symmetry. I like that. I like that the curve of the clip matches the curve of the body. Yeah. And I like that the markings are subtle. The only marking on the outside of the knife is the Chris Reeve logo, which is right here. There we are. It's just subtly engraved into the frame. You can barely see it. And there are only two other markings that I've been able to find on the knife. One is the Idaho Made, which I already showed you inside the frame there, Idaho Made. And the other is on the other side. It took me a while to find it, but there is a signature there from Bill Halsey, the designer. And that's it. And I like that Chris Reeve knives are quite unadorned. They tell you what their blade material is and the serial number of your knife and everything, but they don't feel obliged to stamp that loudly on their knives. I like that. I like the blade. Chris Reeve Knives does good things with S35 VN. It's a beautiful blade. Out of the box, it was sharp. I haven't felt the need to further sharpen it. And one of the things I like about Chris Reeve Knives is it's symmetric. Out of the box, the bevels on both sides were identical, or as close as to identical as I can measure. Where with a lot of knives, they're quite obviously hand beveled and rather sloppily different from one side to the other. So this is beautifully done. And it has the Chris Reeve Knives standard large radius hollow grind. So this surface is not flat. You just see the way it's reflecting knife there. It is a slight concave curve, a hollow grind of a very large radius, and it makes the knife beautiful and it makes it cut well. So I like that. It's very comfortable to hold. The finger grooves here in this general shape make for a good hand hold, and there's just enough room, all four fingers comfortably on the knife. And finally, as with all Chris Reeves, and unlike my old Boy Scout jackknife, you can disassemble and maintain the knife. The pivot screw here is a hex key, and Chris Reeve actually ships with the tools and the grease that you use to take your knife apart and maintain it. I haven't done that with this one. I'm a little nervous, frankly, putting it back together with those close tolerances and the recessed washers. But it's good to know that when I need to, I can. Those are things I like a lot about the knife. Now, there are a couple of minor things that I don't like. The things I don't like are really all about the mechanism. First, the opening tension is odd. It's designed so that it gets progressively harder to move while you're opening it. There's a non-circular radius in there so that it starts out quite easy to open. And as I pull, it gets harder and harder to open until it locks open. Now, that's a deliberate design decision. I've actually seen people writing about it, and it's clever. I think the engineering must be interesting to do that, but I'm not sure why that's a good thing. What problem is that solving? And because it's getting harder to open, it is, by the time it gets there, quite hard to open. Initially, when I first got this thing, I could really not open it with the nail nick. I could get it about that far, and then I just couldn't pull it any farther. I was afraid I was going to break my nail off. So I would get this far, and then I would switch to pinching the blade with my thumb and forefinger to open it the rest of the way. Now, time and some lubrication and sort of lots of opening and closing it has loosened it up a bit, enough that it now opens with just a nail. It's still harder than I'd like. I should probably disassemble it and clean it and lubricate it, but I haven't. And I don't think I should have to do that on a new knife, but who knows how long it's been sitting in storage. So it may just have been that. It may have been dry. It may have had a little dust in it. And as I say, time and lubrication has made it easier. But at first, when I first got it, I was a little disappointed with how hard it was to open. The other thing about the mechanism is there's no half stop. On the other slip joints that I have, like the lion steels, when you open it halfway, you get a quite a noticeable detent about there. And then you open it the rest of the way and you get a detent there. And when closing, same thing, you get a halfway detent. There is no such thing here. So once you started at closing, it's getting progressively easier all the way to close. So that half stop on the other knives is a safety feature and makes it less likely that you'll flick the knife all the way closed on your hand. And this doesn't have that, and that seems odd, such a beautifully designed knife. So I like that it is a slip joint, but it's not my favorite slip joint mechanism. So let's go through my rating systems, my internationally unknown NTGK rating for non-threatening gentleman's knife. We do non-threatening, then gentleman's knife. So for non-threatening, there's some good. Probably the most important thing is that being a slip joint, it is a slow, two-handed opening operation. So there is no flicking the knife open that scares non-knife people into thinking switchblade. And there are no silly tactical decorations on it, no jagged edges or recurves or points sticking out or barbs. It's a simple utilitarian shape. This is for cutting things, not as a weapon. And finally, being a slip joint, people get nostalgic about slip joints. It reminds them of like it's a new production of an old knife. It's, oh yeah, my grandpa had a knife like that, except it had antler on the ends and it had two blades and a corkscrew, but it was just like that. And I'm saying to myself, yeah, no, it wasn't. But that nostalgic connection to their past desensitizes people and makes it less threatening. So that's all good. The bad on the non-threatening is that it is a little large. And we talked about the unusually large blade. And it is just a little bit large to be non-threatening. I mean, that's bigger than Grandpa's blade. Now, I know large blades are more useful. I get that. But for an NTGK, an NTGK, a non-threatening gentleman's knife, is for cutting string and envelopes. It's not for cutting firewood. So anyway, that's the bad. I'll give it an A for non-threatening. As a gentleman's knife, I'm going to say the good is, Chris Reeve, the premium brand, and Impinda, rare model. And so that, anything that is a little less common is a nice gentleman's decoration. The ultra-close tolerances and the fine machining, again, make it a nice gentleman's thing, a nice curiosity to have in your pocket. The subtle marking, I think, is gentlemanly. Okay. The bad, as a gentleman's knife, is that it's a shallow carry clip, rough titanium scales. It's not decorative. It's not some of the beautiful wood inlays that they have available for other knives. And it's kind of heavy on the pocket. So clipped under the edge of your pocket, it will really deform noticeably your dress pants. I tend to carry it in my pocket in a, which I just dropped, in a leather slip. So I tend to carry it in my pocket like that, not on my pocket, because it's a little bit heavy as a gentleman's carry. So I'd say a B as a GK. So overall, I'm going to give it a B plus as a NTGK, non-threatening gentleman's knife. Next rating would be my KN rating, which is what will my knife nerd friends think of this knife? Well, again, the good is it's a Chris Reeve, so knife nerds all love to see and handle Chris Reeves, and it's a less common brand, so they'll find that interesting too. And it's a conversation point with knife nerds that it's the first non-Chris Reeve Chris Reeve. Amazing tolerances. Everybody loves to look at that, especially those recessed washers, and a good blade. So, knife nerds will like all of those things. Now, the mechanism may be a bit of a setback. First of all, some knife nerds just dismiss all slip joints out of hand because they want knives that can be deployed quickly and with one hand. And this one is hard to open. Not only can it not be done with one hand, it can't be flicked, it's not as easy to open as you might like. And of course, you can close it with one hand by pressing it against something, but it's not elegant to do that. There's certainly no talk about drop shuttiness. So I would say it's a B as a knife nerd rating. And finally, the CMR, cut myself rating. It's an A, despite the lack of a half stop, which scares me a little bit. I have never managed to cut myself on this knife, so it'll get an A as a CMR. So in summary, this knife is very typical Chris Reeve precision manufacturing, and you got to admire that. I don't love it as much as my other Chris Reeve knives. It's not easy to open. I miss the half stop. It's not handsome in the way many NT/GK slip joints are. It's really designed as a high-end working knife, like an Inkosi, but for places where locking is prohibited. The collectability of it is the incredible fit and finish and machining tolerances. I like it. I carry it on weekends. I plan to keep it. It's not a knife that goes with me to the office very often. It's really not quite designed for that. I'm very pleased to have it in my collection, though. Thanks for looking at it with me. See you again next time. Bye-bye.